So federal law. It's important for us as Catholics to know and follow the law. So this is from the dictionary.law.com. It's just a summary of federal law regarding self-defense. So this is not a primary legal document, but it's derived from that. The use of reasonable force to protect oneself or members of the family from bodily harm from the attack of an aggressor, if the defender has reason to believe he is in danger. The force used in self-defense may be sufficient for protection from apparent harm or to halt any danger from attack, but cannot be an excuse to continue the attack or use excessive force. It would otherwise be assault or homicide. Okay, so this is interesting to look at in how it really does coincide well with Catholic moral thought as expressed in the Catechism. Avoiding excessive force, we have to believe that we're in serious danger to use a force that could be lethal. But we may use reasonable force to protect ourselves and our members of the family from bodily harm from an attack of an aggressor. I think that fits very well. The state of North Carolina has a couple of laws. One is the Castle Doctrine, and you can look that up as well to see that. This is a direct quote from the North Carolina legislature, ncleg.net. The home, workplace, and motor vehicle protection. Presumption of fear or of death or serious bodily harm applies during an attempted or successful break-in or kidnapping from the above locations. There are no criminal or civil charges that may be brought to bear when the owner uses deadly force, so long as the attacker is not ceasing hostility beforehand. So a person's home, workplace, or car, that's their castle. So being able to defend that without being prosecuted for it, the goal of it anyway, was to make it easier for people to defend themselves, even using potentially lethal means to do so, if necessary, without being prosecuted for that. I believe that is the intent behind it. So, again, I think it fits well within Catholic moral law. If an attacker were to cease hostility, then it would be immoral to continue to defend oneself against that. It would no longer be defense. And this applies to even places outside the immediate home, such as on the front porch or outside the door, if one were to believe one was in risk of serious harm. So the part two, the standard ground law, and I think this could be misused in some situations. It has been, but it is the use of force in defense of person and relief from criminal or civil liability. Part A, a person is justified in using force except deadly force against another when and to the extent that the person reasonably believes that the conduct is necessary to defend himself or herself or another against the other's imminent use of unlawful force. However, a person is justified in the use of deadly force and does not have a duty to retreat in any place he or she has the lawful right to be if either of the following applies. Number one, he or she reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself. And part two, it discusses the Castle Doctrine. Okay, so there's no legal obligation, part two, retreat from an aggressor if one deems it necessary to not do so. So I think this law's intent is to protect those who are physically unable to get away from harm, including within the home, but even outside the home. Sometimes people may be cornered or not have much of an ability to get away, and then it just makes it legally easier to have this law in place. A misuse of it would be to be looking for a chance to fight somebody or deal them harm if they are attacked, and to stand one's ground in that instance. That would be hoping for an attack would be immoral as well. Something that I hadn't really thought of before a few years ago, thinking about reflections as a husband and father. My children have a right to have a father to raise them, and I've before wondered about whether or not I would be willing to use potentially lethal force to defend my own life if I was the only one who was being threatened. And having that pointed out to me, or thinking about that, reading that, my children have that right to me being present to them as a father, really made me think about that. I'm not just, if I'm by myself, being attacked. It's not just about me, it's about my children. And so I'm defending their ability to have a father to come home. I just thought that was a good thing to point out as well. Okay, now we're going to look at some specific scenarios. If one were to be in a defensive situation, what would be the moral thing to do and what would be the legal thing to do? And they may or may not always be the same. But let's go ahead and look at those. I have 3 scenarios. And I would take questions. I would love to have a discussion about this as well and in applying this. So, scenario 1, man in the parking lot. You are returning to your car after some late shopping and hear footsteps behind you. No other cars are nearby. The man following you grabs your purse or wallet and begins to run away. Okay, so for the first part, before the mugging, what would be moral and legal? And how about after the mugging? Is the person causing serious bodily harm or a grave threat to that? I would argue that no, he is not. There's someone walking behind you. No one's nearby. This is a dangerous situation that would be wise and prudent to have situational awareness. But once somebody's already grabbed one's wallet or purse and is turning to run away, they are no longer a grave threat. So dealing them a blow at this point would be immoral, potentially seriously so if it was a serious blow. And I think legally it'd be the same thing. Scenario 2, bump in the night. At 2 a.m., while you and your family are asleep, you hear a series of consistent loud bangs on the front door, then silence. 2 men enter the room holding your son or daughter and demanding you hold your hands up. Okay, so this is a very nasty situation. For the first part, during the breaking in, what would be moral and legal? Think about that. Also thinking about after the intruders have entered and kidnapped a family member. Okay, so during the breaking in, by the Castle Doctrine, one would, in the night, be thought to be reasonable legally for thinking that they are under grave threat. So using potentially lethal means in that circumstance would be legally justified. And I think it could be morally as well if you believe that you were in serious danger at that time. So if you had a means to defend yourself in that situation, it would be potentially moral and legal to do so, to defend oneself. After the intruders have entered and kidnapped a family member, I think it's even more clear as well. This is an issue of prudence as well as morality. Know yourself, your level of expertise with anything defensive in nature you'd be able to do in a hostage kidnapping situation like that. But experience would tell us that in that situation, it's a very dangerous one, that the intruders in that case would very likely mean the death of either the whole family or individuals within that family. It's a very dangerous situation. So it would be certainly morally justified to defend oneself, and legal. It may or may not be prudent depending on what your abilities are and what you are prepared with. So what are some strategies for avoiding this situation or defending yourself morally and legally? It's also, I think, good to look at the prudent part of that. What can you do to harden your particular home? You can use the 3 or 3.5 inch screws in your door jamb as opposed to the short ones that come with a deadbolt or your typical door lock. Those longer screws, it's a cheap security upgrade that goes straight into the stud of the wall. It makes a big difference on a break-in using a kick-in method like I just described in this scenario. That's a very inexpensive way to make a good upgrade for your home. But think through your situation for your family in that regard. What would be best ways to mitigate that situation, as well as the first one with the mugging, practicing good situational awareness, going to the store, hopefully when there are other people around, just trying to stay safe by avoiding the situation. Scenario 3, civil unrest. Some neighbors you know well own a shop downtown. Riots and looting are breaking out all over the nation, including in your area, and the store owners are concerned for their shop or livelihood. This is really struck home, isn't it? The owners ask you to stay with them as a presence to hopefully dissuade any looting, and you agree to do that. Again, you may not think this is a prudent thing to do, and that's fine. This is just looking at the morality and legality of this. Prudence is a separate thing. Prudence meaning what's the best course of action with wisdom. That's something that is a different subject. As night falls, looters can be heard approaching. Nearby shop windows are being smashed. As a hooded figure walks past, he throws a brick into the shop, shattering the glass windows. Other looters gather outside on the sidewalk, shouting obscenities at you and making threatening gestures. Okay, so for the first part, during the breaking of the window with the one hooded figure walking by and throwing in the brick, what would be moral and legal in that situation? And then how about after the window was broken with the threatening crowd outside? What would be moral and legal in that situation? Okay, so during the breaking of the window, the hooded figure threw the brick and continued to walk on past. There's no ongoing threat. It's escalated and de-escalated very quickly. It looks like just property damage, and property and people are different things. Just if you caught a burglar in the act of stealing your television, a TV is a thing, a burglar is a person, and therefore it would not be legally or morally justified to deal any lethal harm. So in this situation, that also applies. After the window is broken with the threatening crowd outside, a very dangerous situation. I think it would be reasonable if you're in the situation to be ready to defend oneself. But the Castle Doctrine, they haven't crossed in quite yet. They're still in public sidewalk area. The Castle Doctrine would not apply. They are not crossing in to do lethal harm to you. So there would be, you wouldn't do anything to defend yourself in that regard. Avoiding that situation, that's an issue of prudence as well. Again, that's a very dangerous situation to be in. Okay, so plan, train, equip yourself. Talk about as a family what you think would be reasonable to do. As your situation, every family is different. So I'm not giving any advice to everyone as a group that this is the best thing for everyone. But what can you do in your situation to minimize the risk of a potentially deadly encounter? Study the laws of particular weapons, lethal and non-lethal, what you would be comfortable actually using. Don't buy something that you don't think that you would use. Do you have a plan for when and how you would use that weapon, if any, and when would you practice? Practice is a very important part. You can't just use a particular tool to ward off harm. It doesn't work that way. In order to have something, you have to be ready to use it. And to be able to use it, you have to practice. So know what the capabilities are of the tools you're using and your own capabilities so that you'd be able to do that without hurting other people, including your family. Are you willing and able to use potentially lethal force if and when attacked? If the answer is no, then don't have anything that would be potentially lethal to defend yourself. What limitations do you have concerning your home layout, your age, or family members that are present? Would any methods of defense negatively impact the neighbors or others who live in the area? You have to really think about how you defend yourself. How would that affect other people around you? And be responsible with that. What is your home security plan? The layout of your home is very important, especially for particular types of defensive tools as well. How will you communicate that to your family? So just like having a fire drill, having a drill for what you would do in the event of a home invasion, or if you're out shopping and someone were to attack you, what would you do? Those are important things to work through with your family as well. If you have any questions about that or anything else, I would be delighted to help you. You can comment on Facebook there. Any other questions you have, you're welcome to email me as well. And go back and read the Catechism as well and any other church documents on this matter. God bless you.